p.m. and we are in the Mary Pat Flynn Conference Center. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates will be conducted both in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast by clicking the link on the county website. The participation guide is also available on the county website if you click the link. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or any other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information about that, look for the county link under Justina Marzak. She is the ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator for the Barnstable County, and she can be reached at 508-375-6646. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams. Join the computer or mobile app at the appropriate link. Meeting ID 256-857-243-053, passcode uppercase X, lowercase x, 29, lowercase e, uppercase a, 9, lowercase m. Or call 781-469-0191. Conference ID 186-673-737 #. I just want to take this time to ask anybody with any kind of device that makes any noise whatsoever to please shut that down. Going to call the meeting to order. And if we could now have a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving in the armed forces. Those of you who would like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty, and justice for all. If we could have a roll call vote, Mr. Clerk, when you're ready.
Madam Speaker, Delegate Frederickson,
Here.
Delegate Frizel, Delegate Fuller,
Here.
Delegate Gallagher, Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Here.
Delegate Green.
Here.
Delegate Harder.
Here.
Delegate Killian.
Here.
Delegate O'Malley.
Here.
Dean Omen.
Here.
Speaker Potash.
Here.
Delegate Sampson.
Here.
Delegate Ty.
Here.
Delegate Warner.
Here.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Here.
All right, Madam Speaker, you have a quorum with 13 members representing 92.98% of the county's population.
Yes, thank you. And Dean Omen, can we have a motion for approval of the journal and minutes of the Assembly of Delegate Meetings 20 of August 2025?
So moved, Madam Speaker.
And second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Mr. Clerk, when you're ready.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel, Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher, Deputy Speaker Gasson, Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Dean Omen,
Yes.
Speaker Potash,
Yes.
Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, that is 13 yeses representing 92.98% of the population.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And now, Dean Omen, can we have a motion to adopt the order of business for today?
I move the adoption of the order of business, Madam Speaker.
Second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Clerk, when you're ready.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel, Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher, Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Yeah.
Delegate Green,
Yes.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Dean Omen,
Yes.
Speaker Potash,
Yes.
Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
And that's 13 representing 92.98%.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Now, do we have any communications from members of the public or public officials? Is there anyone? Are there anyone? Nope, okay. Okay, we're gonna only talk when we're recognized in this meeting. I don't see anyone. Am I wrong, Mr. Clark?
I don't see, are there a couple people online? No one has their hand up and
Okay, very good. So the next thing we're going to do is ask for communications from the regional commissioners, administrator, and directors. I understand we have Assistant County Administrator Vera Harik here, and we welcome you.
Hello, all. Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't have a particular report today, except to say that we have transmitted to you the responses to the questions that delegates had regarding grants, the county's grants management processes, and grants in hand, grants pending, and grants that have been unsuccessful in their application. Mr. Dutton sends his regrets today. He can't be here. And we will defer, if that's all right, a more detailed report of recent activities until your next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, if you don't mind, can I just confirm for you that will tee us off for 10A on our agenda, that indeed the regional commissioners voted for a resolution regarding an elected charter commission? I know you were on vacation, but do you have knowledge of that?
I don't have knowledge of that. If that's what our agenda and meeting on Wednesday held, then last Wednesday, then that's accurate. I'm sorry, I can't. Can't
Oh,
give
that's
you
okay.
a Glomar response was neither confirm nor deny. So
I feel like I'm back in court. All right, so thank you very much for that report. And now number 10A, presentation on Board of Regional Commissioners resolution, which indeed happened.
Can we ask?
We're gonna,
Can we ask?
okay, you are talking and you weren't recognized yet. However, based on what you said, I am gonna back up and we will allow you to ask Ms. Farik a question, although she has told you she just got back from vacation and she's not intimately aware of information, but yes, only because I neglected to let you ask questions. You can do so. Delegate Green, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Ms. Harik, for what you did say. I did have a question about what you did say. I know that we received information from Ms. Capola earlier today. I looked at it very briefly. I did not see anything about grants from the Cape Cod Commission. Am I correct in that? Or is there something about the Cape Cod Commission grants in the material that was sent to us?
yeah, well, with respect, you are incorrect in that. There was a Excel workbook transmitted that had, I think, 4 tabs in it, and the 4th tab in that is a repetition with some expansion from the commission on what they sent to you in late July. So there is a 4th tab in the Excel workbook that we sent, and we sent that yesterday, not earlier today.
Oh, I saw that today, earlier today. Thank you very much. I'll look
Sure.
at the 4th tab. Appreciate it. Bye.
Are there any other questions for Assistant Administrator Harik, based on everything you already know about her just getting back from vacation? Seeing none. Okay, seeing none, we will now move to presentation on Board of Regional Commissioners resolution supporting creating an elected charter commission. And we have Attorney Lauren Goldberg online, and she is KP Laws and County Counsel. Please. You are muted, Attorney Goldberg. Sorry. Nope, still not coming through. We're going to try to address that. One moment, Counsel. We have technical difficulty here.
probably on her end and not.
It could be on your end, Counsel. Can you check, double check? Nope, still muted. You're not muted. I understand. Hold on, we'll see what the remedy might be. It could be you calling in. We'll see. We're asking IT what he suggests. We've been told that perhaps you could sign off and sign back in. And then if that doesn't work, call in. Okay, good. We see your thumbs up and thank you. Okay, we're just gonna wait. We see you again. Sorry, it's still muted. Do you want to call? Let's see, figure out who to call. You can call myself.
No, there should be a call-in number. That's probably the best way to do it if we're still gonna have. Someone's doing something. Yeah, so.
Okay, great. Call in then. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While we're waiting, you introduced her as county counsel, and I thought Ms. Goldberg was the Assembly's counsel.
She's both.
and-
She's both. KP Law is county counsel and she is the managing partner of KP Law.
Right, but I thought she was representing the Assembly delegates in charter
She is.
matters.
She is.
She called it. Let's see.
Looks, okay.
Hold on. Let me. And I'm trying to do that now.
Do you want to shut you up?
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome. I know you've prepared for
Thank you.
this and thank God you can communicate with us. So
This
proceed.
is the biggest lead up ever. The biggest lead up ever. So thank you. Thank you for having me. I understand, as do you, that the Board of Regional Commissioners adopted a resolution on August 27th in accordance with Chapter 801. And under 801 Section 3C, it says when a resolution has been filed, no other resolution or proceedings for adoption of any other charter or form of government will go forward unless the voters decide the question in the negative. I've been asked, therefore, what happens next with respect to the resolution. The resolution would be filed with the Secretary of the Commonwealth. There is a question in Section 801, but my understanding is that question would also be voted by the Board of Commissioners. Once that has been filed with the Secretary, it would be included on the biennial state election, which is some time from now. At some point between now and then, the nomination papers for the office of election commissioner would also become available. I believe they are issued by the state secretary. And in order to have your name be placed, any person have their name be placed on the ballot, they would need 20 certified signatures. And I know all of you on the Assembly know how to circulate nomination papers for signatures. And that typically the elections division recommends getting at least twice as many as needed in case some are not certified. And each town in Barnstable County will elect a commissioner, and that person must be from the town in which they are elected. Those papers are then filed with the Secretary of the Commonwealth no later than the 10th Tuesday prior to the state election. They would initially, however, I think 2 weeks before that, be presented for certification in the town in which the individual is running. And then the question of whether to elect a charter commission and the charter commission candidates would appear on the ballot at the same time at that biennial state election. So that is the process. I understand, and this is quite common, that there are questions about the action that assembly members, either collectively or individually, and other elected officials, the commissioners, can take with respect to a ballot question. And that issue is governed by two sets of laws. One is the campaign finance law, and the other is the conflict of interest law. Elected officials are allowed to have an opinion, thank goodness, on anything that they would like. And so individual commissioners and individual members of the assembly can act and speak with respect to the ballot question at their discretion. In addition, the full assembly can take a position, the full board of commissioners can take a position without violating either the conflict of interest law or the campaign finance law. The campaign finance law in general prohibits the non-requested distribution of information, essentially that's election related. So what that would mean is that an email couldn't be sent to all persons that have signed up for automated emails with the commission or with the assembly saying, here's the information about why an elected charter commission is needed, et cetera. However, an email could be sent that says, if you are interested in learning more about the question, click here, and it can then take a registered voter to the website. Again, there can be information posted on the website about the ballot question. What it cannot do, however, is kind of open up by itself. It needs to be subject to being clicked upon. Ballot questions can be discussed at meetings of public bodies. There can be a forum on the topic. There can be analysis done of the ballot question by both the assembly and the commissioners, and that information as well can be made available upon request. The information that's prepared can also, as it's a public record, it can be requested by any person, and those persons also have the right to distribute that information. They can do a mailing. They can do it on their own. If they're going to combine finances with any other person, however, then they need to form a ballot question committee. Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any additional questions that might be raised today.
Thank you so much. And yes, Brian O'Malley from Provincetown, you're up first.
Thank you, Council. What do we know about whether individual members of the assembly or commissioners would be able to run for these positions on the Charter Review Commission?
Madam Chair, should I respond?
Yes, please. Every time a question is asked to you, please just feel free to respond.
Okay, thank you. It's hard because I can't see you to get a nod. So I have reviewed Chapter 801, and I have reviewed the charter, and it does not appear that there is anything that would prohibit a person from running for both positions. In general, any registered voter is eligible to run for election unless there is something either in state law or in a charter or special act that prohibits that. So I'm not aware of anything in the charter or Chapter 801 that does prohibit that. And as such, in my opinion, a person could run for both.
Thank you.
And yes, Carl Frizel from Brewster, please go ahead, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I run through the timeline with you, council?
Certainly.
So as I understand it, and correct me whenever I'm wrong about this, this ballot question, when it's officially considered approved by the Secretary of State, goes on the ballot in November of 26. So that's the earliest we get the election. And then, assuming the voters approve it, then the commission's formed and it needs to file a report somewhere in time for the voters to either approve or disapprove the new charter in November of 28. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so then there would have to be some kind of transition period because you don't know, you can't run for an office that hasn't been approved. So would that mean that the first time there would be any elections held under this new charter would be November of 2030? Is that correct?
Yes, unless there were special legislation that authorized an election at an earlier time.
So have you,
Or that,
You're-
yeah.
have you ever seen that where there's an election, a special state, that has to be approved by the Secretary of State, correct?
It would, correct.
So it'd have to be
So-
part of the legislation or something to get it sooner than 2030.
Yes, that's exactly the case. It is common for charters to have transition provisions in them. It is common for them to, make changes over time. And because this, document would wind up, or this charter, if this were to go forward, it could request essentially that a special election be held earlier. That is something, in my opinion, that if there is significant interest in doing, that topic or that question would be discussed with the Secretary's Elections Division in advance to see what their willingness would be. And ultimately, as you know, it is possible that, if they were exceptionally disinclined to do that the commission might want to take a different route.
But it'd have to be the commission that would be the one petitioning for an election sooner than 2030.
It would be in the charter recommended by the commission.
Correct. So is it then I assume there are other quicker ways to get a charter changed than this. Isn't this the longest potential time period for there to be a charter change under the provisions of either Chapter 801 or our own charter?
The answer to that is maybe, in my opinion. I don't know if I can say, so definitively, because it is, an appointed charter committee, whether it makes a recommendation and then, when that recommendation is acted upon, could take longer, shorter, whether a consensus is developed. I can't answer any of those things.
So if we had gone with a route that was at least put on the table for consideration by the Charter Review Committee, that we have a petition to the legislature, which was approved by the Assembly of Delegates and the Commissioners, you're saying that could have even been longer than this potential situation?
What I'm suggesting is that that process, the process that's kind of not specified, that timeline is not specified in the charter, the same way that 801 has, that Chapter 801 has a timeline. So I can't predict that. It would be up to the Assembly and up to the commissioners how fast or slow that process might go.
Okay. Well, I guess it could be faster than this process. This process can't get faster. So we know that we could have done this faster. The reason I bring this up is looking at the resolution, which was signed by the commissioners, I was really struck by some of their whereas clauses. And they provide in their whereas clause, the regional services the intention was to provide efficiencies and cost savings to the towns and taxpayers of Barnstable County. And they go further to state, since 1988, very little progress has been made in providing these regional services or creating the efficiencies and cost savings envisioned in the 1980 report of the Charter Commission. It just strikes me that if you see this after 35 years, and now you take the position, we're going to take the long route to solve a problem we have identified in our resolution very definitively, rather than at least trying to take a shorter route, which was at least put on the table for consideration by the Charter Committee. I'm struck by the not even trying to go that route and see whether that route provided a faster way to get to where we want to be, which is providing efficiencies and cost savings to the towns, which we've made, according to the commissioners, very little progress in 35 plus years. Does it strike you as something odd?
You don't have to answer that,
Well,
Lauren.
Yes, my
That
answer,
last one.
my
you
answer
don't
is
have to
going to
answer it.
be,
Yeah.
yes,
It was
my
rhetorical.
answer is
Madam.
going to
You-
be, that's a policy decision, and I really have no
yeah.
legal opinion about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, and I share Delegate Frizel's frustration, because the way I looked at it, and I've been very frank about this, is that the Charter Review Committee could have just provided the Assembly and certainly the regional commissioners an idea. And we didn't have to come in here and ask July 16th whether or not you would be interested in being open-minded on accepting that idea. But we did that, Charter Review. And so when we came in here on July 16th, we asked you, are you open-minded with some ideas for a change in the structure? And it did not come through loud and clear that people were open-minded. It came through very defensively, especially to the commissioners, where they were downright insulted by at least one delegate. Therefore, they just said, well, the idea of working with those 15 people and the three of us to devise a plan like adults, they didn't see that there was a universe where that would happen. And so they just said, forget about it. And then they went along with this resolution. That's the way I think it happened, based on my conversations with various people. And I'm disappointed in that, because I do think that we could have worked together, come out with a plan, provided that to the voters in 2026, and it could have just been done like that. Now the ship has virtually sailed. The cow has left the barn, all of those expressions. And I'm sad about that. I'm disappointed about it, and I'm downright frustrated about it. So that's my 2 cents. And I usually don't talk before everybody else is ready to opine, but that is what I think. Who else wants to chime in about Charter Review and this resolution? Anybody? Yes, please. Delegate from.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, Attorney Goldberg. Just beyond the original charter review, because we're obviously have to do a review every 5 years. And so I'm curious if these terms would be defined as 2-year terms, and then would they dissolve or disband, where the term would end after 2 years, and then they would have to elect another body 3 years later. Is that clear to anyone how it would go beyond the original or the initial elected body?
Well, I'm not quite sure how to answer that, Delegate. The decision about how to provide for the transition, whatever it could be, would be something that the elected commission would decide, and whoever works with the elected commission would, try to implement that through the text. So through drafting a transition section, and transition sections of that nature could cut short the terms of elected officials. It could extend the term of elected officials. It could leave those terms alone. So, there would be many options available, and it would be up to the commission to make a decision about how to handle that if, in fact, the size of the assembly or the commission were changed.
Well,
I
I'm
think
looking.
is what you were suggesting.
What I'm suggesting is if the structure did not change, if after 2 years, the elected charter review did not make any recommendations or none passed at the ballot. So would this process continue every 5 years? A separate charter review committee would be elected and they would serve for 2 years, make their recommendations and then disband for 3 years. Is that how the cycle would continue, or we just don't have that detail?
So in my opinion, based on your question, that an elected charter commission can only be initiated in the manner provided in Chapter 801. The every 5-year charter review committee isn't elected, it's appointed. And so they, the idea is that there would be this kind of ongoing review of the charter. And as I discussed with the charter review committee, oftentimes that's to look at things to see whether state laws change in such a way that a revision is required or appropriate, or if something really isn't working and there's an effort to fix it. But that does not require that an elected charter commission be created.
I understand that part. I guess I'm just trying to wrap my arms around the fact of this elected charter review commission will continue in perpetuity as well. So it's just a one-time only. So it'll be just that one review and then it's done. Okay, now I understand.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I just interject, Council? Can you just confirm that they have 18 months to make a recommendation? I believe that's in the statute. Am I correct about that?
That is correct. They have 18 months to make a recommendation.
Okay. Yes, Delegate O'Malley.
So pursuant to that line of questioning that just came up, obviously our charter prescribes a mechanism for charter review periodically, and it prescribes a 10-month period of time at which point a report is to be issued. Are we understanding here that what is being attempted is a parallel charter review, or quite frankly, a complete elimination of the existing mechanism of charter review? I mean, are we going to have two different charter reviews going on periodically with this, and one has no ending point, no determination of how long they would have to report? I find it curious. Do you? I guess the crux of the question is: do you see this as functionally displacing the charter review process that we have begun?
Go ahead, Lauren, please.
Yes,
Council.
thank you. So the way that the charter and Chapter 801 work, essentially the charter says you can amend the charter in any of the following ways, which includes a recommendation or a proposal from the assembly approved by the commissioners. It also says you can elect a charter commission. And so it points back to Chapter 801. So the elected charter commission is an available route to reviewing the charter. That route could make changes in the format of the government, of the county government. So it can make extensive changes, or it could not make extensive changes. It is on a parallel track to the regular charter review. It doesn't have to be, but it can mimic that. So in towns, for example, there are times when there'll be a charter review committee that's been appointed, and then there will be a petition for an elected charter commission. So those two things could also happen at the same time. And whether the appointed committee moves forward or not is really a question for that committee, because it doesn't invalidate the appointment of the committee or the work of the committee just because the elected charter commission, or because a charter commission will be elected. And again, the charter appears to allow for all of this at any time, meaning this route is available at any time. It's not limited in any way.
So can I just clarify, Council, that right now, the way it looks, there'll be a question on the ballot that says, would you like an elected charter commission, people of Cape Cod, essentially? That's one question. And the other question will be, who do you want from each of these towns? There could be one or more people running for the charter commission. Let's just say, for example, there were 3 people in Yarmouth running for the charter commission. So that's on the ballot. So that's 2 things. Third, there's also 15 towns with delegates running in each town. That's another thing. And then thirdly, there's somebody running for a commissioner because Ron Bergstrom's appointment is up. And so there'd be one person running for commissioner. So that's all essentially bound to be on there, correct? Right now?
That's what it would appear.
Okay, so then next, let's just say for the sake of argument, the Charter Review Committee says, delegates, we have this language change that we've conducted because you've asked us to do that. And we have this document now, and we're going to give this over to the Assembly. And these are language changes that we recommend. The Assembly, would you like to put that on the ballot too? And then the Assembly says, you know, let's say 51% of the Assembly says, yeah, sure, throw that on. And so that has to be done by ordinance. And then the ordinance goes over to the commissioners and they said, hell no, we've already told you how we want to go about it. So the answer is no on that. Then it comes back to the Assembly, that same ordinance, and the Assembly needs to pass that by 67%. And in the event it did, now we have that to throw on the ballot too, right, Council?
Well, Madam Chair, I think that's the question of the hour, because there is language in Chapter 801 that suggests that once this charter commission has been, once the resolution for a charter commission has been filed, that no additional, and I can read you the.
Yeah, no, I know. I just
language.
wanted you to
Yeah.
say that. I don't want anyone to take my word for
Got
it.
it.
God forbid.
So-
Do not take my word for it. Yes.
So because of that, you know, I have to say it's not exactly obvious, because you could argue, because it says something about the no other proceedings for adoption of any other charter or form of government available to the county may be filed unless the voters decide the aforesaid question in the negative. So, you know, my interpretation, and I do not wear any black robes and I do not issue edicts, but my interpretation of that is that is intended to prevent the scenario that you just
Okay.
outlined, which would be
Okay.
elect a charter commission, make these changes, you know, because it's confusing.
Yeah.
I have not received anything or found anything definitive on the topic, but I do think that would be a very confusing situation.
No, I think it would be too. So if the Assembly of Delegates wanted to put more on the ballot, like if they wanted to continue on with charter review and charter review had some recommendations, then in order for that to end up on the ballot, there could be a legal, you know, quote unquote battle then, because the commissioners might not want that. Obviously, they wouldn't want it. So we would be in a conundrum, I think. And I don't need you to necessarily answer that because it's probably pretty obvious. There is a conundrum. And I'm going to let Delegate Frizel go next, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the statute, Chapter 801, says form, no other ballot question as to form. So there could be amendments by the Charter Committee that does not change form of any of the bodies of this government, regional government. I don't know why that couldn't be on the ballot. But my further question is, where are we going from here? Where's the Charter Review Committee going to go now? And I guess one factual question is, has the petition or the resolution actually been filed yet with the Secretary of State?
So, Council, if you know, has it been filed with the Secretary of State yet, or is that sort of like in process?
Madam Chair, I do not know if it has been. However, what it says in Chapter 801, 3C, is that when a resolution or petition for the creation of a Charter Study Commission has been duly filed with the county commissioners. So the resolution exists, and in my opinion, it is valid. Notification will have to be provided to the secretary, but to me, that section does say filed with the commissioners.
Yeah, okay, that's a good answer. So I think I would just leave off with, does anyone else have any questions for council on this topic? Yes, please, Delegate Harder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this means then that the Charter Committee we currently have in existence is dead. What I'm curious about is if the ballot initiative to have an elected Charter Commission fails, can we then immediately pick up, can we then continue to work on charter changes without having to wait another 3 years? Since it's prescribed to be 5 years, charter review in 5 years. I mean, on November, 10th, 2026, if the initiative fails to have an elected charter, are we then able to go back to having a committee to work on it?
Yes, and look at that, a lawyer with a yes or no answer, and the answer is yes. There is no prohibition on a committee being appointed, in my mind, at any time for the purpose of doing charter review. And I would just add, you stated that the Charter Review Committee is dead, and in my opinion, there's nothing that prohibits the Charter Review Committee from continuing to review the charter, whether it wants to make recommendations for further consideration at a different point. That is a decision for the Charter Review Committee. I don't think it automatically is non-existent.
Oh, so they can keep working. They just can't,
if they choose
but
to,
they're allowed to keep working.
In my opinion, there's nothing in the charter or Chapter 801 that prohibits that.
Great, thank you.
And stay tuned for charter review to see what we will decide to do. And who wants to go, who's next out of the two of you?
Very simple clarification.
Yeah, Delegate Provincetown, please go ahead.
Chapter 801 appears to be a huge piece. Could we get a more specific reference to cite this? What's the section?
Oh, Chapter 801 has several relevant sections.
Yes.
The first relevant section is Section 3, Submission of Charter Study Question. And then Section 4 talks about the election of the Charter Study Commission. 5 talks about nominating procedures. 6 talks about election procedures. 7 about organization of the commission. 8 about the function. 9 commission finances and operations. So it is quite extensive. And 10 is the role of other county officials.
Yeah.
That's why we had you come tonight. So, yes, Delegate Frizzell and then Delegate Warner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So while the Charter Review Committee can continue to work, what's the point? If you're saying that anything they would produce in the way of recommendations to the Assembly in the way of amending the charter is something which probably, or at least it's a question as to whether it could go on the ballot because of the way at least 801 could be interpreted. We don't know. So I just wonder why we just go forward if there's that question and a potential judicial test of whether we can put anything on the ballot at this point.
So I'm just going to interject, and instead of you answering that, Council, unless you're going to say, let's see what the Charter Committee wants to do, that to me, that's the answer to that. What the Charter Review Committee votes. Is that accurate, Council?
That's accurate. As I indicated, in my opinion, the Charter Review Committee can continue its work. In theory, this question of whether something else could be filed, we can just leave it out there as a theory, but the work of the Charter Review Committee could, for example, raise questions that it would want the elected Charter Commission to address, or it could identify things that it thought the elected Charter Commission should revise. So that's up to the Charter Review Committee as to whether it thinks that would be useful or appropriate.
Thank you. Susan Warner from Yarmouth. Please go ahead, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have it's a two-part question. The first part is with the very descriptive way that Delegate Friesel pointed out how long this process would take, there would seem to be a certain amount of budget money that would have to come out of the county in order to do this. I'm wondering if there's any way for us to come up with an estimate of what this process will cost the Cape Codders in terms of trying to get an answer to the end. I know that there is some reference made by the speaker that the resolution they put out, in fact, said that no efficiencies or savings have ever been improved for however many years. And in the 5 years I've been on the commission, on the Assembly of Delegates, I can tell you that there are quite a few that I can put my finger on that the Assembly has had action on, making sure that money was saved and choices were reviewed because the first choice was not necessarily the best choice. So I'm not quite sure what they're referencing in terms of that whole point about there has been no efficiencies. But with that in mind, if we had an estimated dollar amount of what this is going to cost the county, that alone might indicate one way or the other whether the county would feel, whether the county overall would feel like voting for it. I sure as heck wouldn't want to see a lot of money go. I know this is a process, but we're trying to evaluate new ways to bring in money and new ways to cut certain costs so that there are better challenges that we can address for the community. And this seems to be, when I listened very carefully what Delegate Friesel said, it kind of blew my mind a little bit, because I really don't see how the process is going to end up in the result that I think a lot of people would hope.
Mm-hmm.
Council,
go
ahead.
I can't respond to kind of the bigger question of whether it's a good thing or whether that might be something that people in the county are supportive of or not supportive of. But in Chapter 801, Section 9B, it says, within 20 days after election of a charter commission, the treasurer shall credit to the account of the commission with or without appropriation $35,000, but no more than 1% of the total county budget. And then it allows additional money to be appropriated not to exceed 5 times the initial contribution. And the expenses that would be related to this would be, either a consultant or a lawyer or both, to write up whatever it is that the Charter Commission, the elected Charter Commission, decided it wanted to achieve. In addition, there would be a requirement for minutes of meetings to be taken. There's a required mailing of that report. That's kind of the final work product. And there's also a publication in a newspaper of local circulation for each of 2 successive weeks.
Thank you.
So wouldn't it have been nice if we could have just figured this out with the 18 of us? But again, unfortunately, that ship sailed. Yes, please go ahead, Delegate Frederickson.
Yeah, there's a question on that. Can there still be some discussion with the current charter review? I'm not sure.
Well, we're gonna have a meeting on the 10th, and I think that we'll talk about it then.
Okay, and secondly, listening to this, I'm getting brain freeze. This is quite confusing, and I think if the general public hears this discussion and the thing going up, there's an element out there that just would want to disband the county government as it is. And quite frankly, listening to the complications, it may not be a bad idea. I'm not suggesting that, but boy, this is really, going in 5 different ways and the public is not going to buy it.
Yeah. So counsel, I just have a question and it's going to sound very controversial, but I think it's even a yes or no answer. When the legislature gets wind of all of this, and if the ballot tends to look like, a 3-ring circus, could the legislation up in Boston say that that's the end of Barnstable County right then and there? Could they do that?
Well, I do believe that's what happened. I mean, I don't know why, but or I don't know the specific reasons why, but I do believe that county government was disbanded in other counties without the request of the counties, but I cannot be sure.
Okay. Anybody else on this topic? No. Oh, yes, please, Delegate Frizzell. Go
I'll
for
say
it.
that, just from my own personal experience, while living in Middlesex County without any consent of the voters, Middlesex County government was eliminated by the legislature. So apparently they do have the power.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just
Madam
wanted
Chair,
her to
if I
say
could
it out
just-
loud. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, if I could just add a comment. Under the Home Rule Amendment to the Massachusetts Constitution, Section 8 has, the kind of description of the authority of the legislature. And what it does is it says that it can make laws relative to a single city or town only on request of that town. It does not contain the same limitation when it comes to more than one city or town. And I don't know kind of the mechanics of whether that the legislature would want to test that, but meaning would they want to go to each city and town and ask the question? I don't know. But I also just wanted to point out for 1 second that this process is very similar. The charter election process, the charter commission, is very similar to that set forth in the Home Rule Amendment for individual cities and towns. And the confusing part, I think, is that you have Chapter 801 and you have the charter, and they both address the topic of charter revision. However, this provision in Chapter 801 for the election of a charter commission is relatively straightforward in that context. It's similar to that for any city or town.
Okay, then. I think that may conclude this discussion, and we very much appreciate you coming and clearing it up the best you can, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right, now we'll go on to another light topic, the presentation of the draft regional policy plan. Executive Director Christy Senatori, Deputy Director Aaron Perry, Chief Planner Chloe Schaefer of the Cape Cod Commission. Enter if you dare. Please.
Great. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, for the record, Christy Senatori, Executive Director of the Cape Cod Commission. Thanks for the opportunity to be here this afternoon to present the draft 2025 Regional Policy Plan. Again, I'm joined by Aaron Perry, Deputy Director, Chloe Schaefer, our Chief Planner, to share briefly some of the key elements of the draft that is currently out for public comment. We wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to get a preview of the contents of the plan as it's currently drafted, recognizing that there will likely be some changes before this comes to you for approval as an ordinance. We will be incorporating public and stakeholder feedback as it makes sense. So is it okay if we're able to share our screen and share a presentation?
Please do.
Okay, great. So this afternoon, we want to provide an overview of the plan chapters, and we're certainly happy to take your feedback and answer any questions if you have them today or after today's meeting. And if you do have technical questions that we're unable to answer today, we'd be certainly glad to follow up. So first, what I would like to do is review the project timeline with everyone. As many of you are aware, we initiated this process back in the fall of last year, where we kicked off the process with a number of sub-regional public hearings. We held a number of focus groups over the course of the winter. We conducted a resident survey. We also conducted a number of meetings with a variety of different stakeholders across the region, and we completed a draft of the plan in earlier this summer. We've also met with our commission subcommittee many times throughout the course of this process. And as I mentioned, the draft plan that is out for public comment, and we did just extend that public comment period through September 25th. So moving into the chapters, which we'll review with you just very briefly. The first chapter discusses the region. It describes the 4 subregions. What you'll see and what we'll review today are really just those changes that we've made to the plan itself. This chapter contains some minor tweaks, really contains more information about the Wampanoag tribe who've been here for thousands of years. It also discusses the Cape Cod Commission responsibilities. So moving into chapter 2 of the plan, this really discusses the evolution of the regional policy plan. And as you can see here on this slide, we've had a regional policy plan in place since the early 1990s when the commission was established. We update that plan every 5 years or so, and you can see the evolution of the plan chapters here, really beginning with protecting the best of Cape Cod, repairing the mistakes of the past. We did a major overhaul of the plan in 2009, really making that division between the planning and regulatory sections. And then another major overhaul of that plan in 2018 with a focus on context-sensitive planning and design, with the goals and objectives being incorporated into the plan. And as many of you are aware, we also completed an update to the plan in 2021, where we really made sure to incorporate more climate change considerations with a new goal and corresponding objectives incorporated in that update as well. So this chapter also discusses the elements of the update process so far, including the focus groups that were held over the winter, as I mentioned earlier, in these 5 issue areas of transportation, economy, housing, open space, and climate change. We also have a summary of the results of the resident survey. And so certainly if you are interested in all the detail, that is information that can be found on our website. But here you'll just see a snapshot of some of the data that we collected. We had over 1,200 respondents to that survey, 91% citing environmental quality as either important or very important in deciding whether to live or maintain a home on the Cape. And we wanted to ask some of the questions related to the top concerns of residents. And so you'll see here on the right-hand side, the percentage of residents identifying a moderate or serious problem now or in 5 years, and really topping the charts there are affordable housing, coastal erosion, traffic congestion, sea level rise, and pond water quality. So certainly not surprising responses there. This chapter also discusses the public meetings that were held, the stakeholder meetings that were held over the course of several months. We held in-person meetings, we held virtual meetings to provide not only an update on the process, but really to get information and feedback on drafting as we proceeded through the process. So the next chapter we identify as the regional vision for Cape Cod. And so you'll see here that the vision for the future of Cape Cod is a region of vibrant, sustainable, and healthy communities and protected natural and cultural resources. And this vision remains unchanged. This is the same vision that we had in the 2018 Regional Policy Plan. We did, however, make some tweaks to the growth policy for Barnstable County, really in response to some public feedback that we received over the course of the last several months. So now the growth policy reads, growth should be focused in centers of activity in areas supported by adequate infrastructure and guided away from areas that must be protected for ecological, historical, or other reasons. Development should be responsive to context, allowing for the restoration, preservation, and protection of the Cape's unique, and here we've added infinite resources while promoting economic, environmental, and community resilience. So really the addition of the recognition that the resources that are contained on the Cape are really finite, and making sure that we're also recognizing that we need to maintain and protect our environmental resilience as well. So the next chapter is chapter 4, which is our Cape Cod systems. And the systems chapter actually changed pretty significantly. It was updated with a lot more data because we have a lot more current data and information. A lot has certainly changed in the last 5 years, and we wanted this chapter to really reflect that. But it does still describe the natural, built, and community systems that comprise the Cape Cod region and how they are interrelated and need to continue to work together for a vibrant and sustainable community. And then finally, chapter 5 is our key regional priorities. And you're probably familiar with the last regional policy plan where we really talked about many of our key regional challenges. And so now we've really shifted the focus to make this more action-oriented and forward-looking. We've really identified that those challenges are really our key regional priorities. And here you can see those listed as protecting open space and natural resources, restoring and protecting coastal and freshwater quality, mitigating climate change and adapting to its impacts, preserving historic and cultural resources, increasing housing attainability, planning and providing for necessary infrastructure, and of course, strengthening our economy. So now I am going to hand it over to Chloe Schaefer to walk through the modifications that we're making to the goals and objectives. And we're happy to take some questions at that point once we finish the presentation with Erin walking through some of the regional regulatory review and recommendations. So I'll hand it to Chloe.
Thanks, Christy. Good evening. As Christy said, my name is Chloe Schaefer. I'm the Chief Planner at the Commission. I'm going to start with Chapter 6, the goals and objectives. And the goals and objectives really play a pivotal role in our regulatory review process, but they also really serve to guide our planning work. And this chapter is organized with those 3 systems that you see in Chapter 4, so the natural, built, and community systems. And within each of those systems, there are specific issue areas. There are 15 in total natural systems, including things like water resources and open space, built systems, things like coastal resiliency and energy, and community systems, cultural heritage, economy, and housing. And one change I'll note here in response to feedback we've received throughout the process, climate change, that issue area in the 2018 regional policy plan is actually climate mitigation, but that has been changed to climate change to incorporate not only mitigation, but adaptation, which we'll get into in a little bit. So going through the goals and objectives, starting with water resources, the goal here being to maintain a sustainable supply of high quality drinking water and protect, preserve, or restore the ecological integrity of Cape Cod's fresh and marine surface water resources. And the objectives really remaining focused on preserving and protecting groundwater quality, our freshwater resources, and our marine water resources. Also dealing with stormwater, managing and treating that. And then the last objective here, managing groundwater withdrawals and discharges. Next is ocean resources, and there were no changes compared to the 2018 regional policy plan for this issue area goal and objectives. The goal remaining to protect, preserve, or restore the quality and natural values and functions of ocean resources. And 3 objectives here. The first, focused on locating development away from those sensitive areas. Second, preserving and protecting ocean habitat and the species it supports. And then third, dealing with human use areas and vistas. Next, under wetlands resources, the goal remaining to protect, preserve, or restore the quality and natural values and functions of inland and coastal wetlands and their buffers. That first objective remaining protecting wetlands and their buffers from changes, grade changes or vegetation changes. There was a bit of streamlining here. Previously, there was a separate objective dealing specifically with stormwater discharges, but that's been incorporated into this second objective, protect wetlands from changes in hydrology, including those associated with stormwater discharges, because when speaking about stormwater discharges in wetlands and protecting them, it's really generally speaking to protecting them from changes in hydrology due to stormwater. And then the third one, remain promoting the restoration of degraded wetland resource areas. Next, under wildlife and plant habitat, the goal remaining to protect, preserve, or restore wildlife and plant habitat to maintain the region's natural diversity. There are 5 objectives still within this issue area. The first, focusing on maintaining our plant and wildlife populations and diversity. Second one, focused on restoring those degraded habitats. The third, focusing specifically on rare species habitat and in particular vernal pools and their buffers and protecting and preserving those. The fourth objective being managing invasive species. And then the fifth one, looking to promote best management practices to help protect our sensitive habitats from potential impacts of development. And then the last issue area in the natural systems is open space. Here, the goal remaining to conserve, preserve, or enhance a network of open space that contributes to the region's natural and community resources and systems. The first objective is protect and preserve natural, cultural, agricultural, and passive recreational resources. A change here was the addition of the word agricultural in this objective to help really emphasize and highlight the importance of our agricultural lands and resources throughout the region. And also here, adding in passive to help define what recreational resources we're talking about within the context of open space here. And both of those changes were in response to feedback we received through the focus groups on open space held throughout this process, as well as other stakeholder feedback. And the second objective here, maintaining or increasing the connectivity of open space. And then the last one here, just kind of a wordsmithing change. So provide protected open space appropriate to context to really get at what we are looking for people to do, which is to provide that protected open space. Moving on to the built systems, the first issue area here is community design. Currently no suggested changes to the goal and objectives here. So the goal remaining to protect and enhance the unique character of the region's built and natural environment based on the local context. The first objective is focused on building and site design and ensuring it's context sensitive and complements its location. The second, looking to minimize the amount of newly disturbed land and impervious surfaces. And then the third one is focused a bit more specifically on infrastructure and avoiding adverse visual impacts from infrastructure on our scenic resources. Next, under coastal resiliency, the goal here to prevent or minimize human suffering and loss of life and property or environmental damage resulting from storms, flooding, erosion, and relative sea level rise, including but not limited to that associated with climate change. One change is in this first objective, minimize development and risk within areas vulnerable to flooding. This term, areas vulnerable to flooding, is new and used instead of simply the floodplain, recognizing that the floodplain doesn't always encompass those areas that are vulnerable today to flooding or that we anticipate will be vulnerable in the future. So using this term instead to really to get at that so that we're addressing our challenges today, but also making sure that what we're doing today can help in terms of resiliency in the future to flooding. The second objective, looking to plan for erosion, dealing with those shoreline changes. And then the third, looking to restore coastal resource areas to promote their natural beneficial functions, both in terms of certainly the species they support, but also their resiliency benefits. Next is capital, facilities, and infrastructure, and the goal to guide the development of capital, facilities, and infrastructure necessary to meet the region's current and demonstrated future needs. Demonstrated future needs was added in here to ensure that we are addressing not only our challenges today, but those in the future, but in a responsible way, ensuring that we are addressing what we think will be needed, projects are appropriate. The first objective, the objectives here being reworked a little bit so that the first one now is really focused on the siting and design, those physical aspects of the infrastructure and ensuring that they are efficient, sustainable, and resilient. And then the second objective now dealing more with the actual services provided by the infrastructure, capital, facilities, and ensuring that those services are coordinated and really responding to the needs of the region. Next, transportation. The goal remaining to provide and promote a safe, reliable, and multimodal transportation system. And the first objective still focused on improving the safety and eliminating hazards for all users of our transportation system. The second one, slight adjustment here, to really emphasize that this is focusing on multimodal transportation options. And so making that a bit more explicit. So provide and promote healthy transportation options and appropriate connections for all users. And now vehicle trip reduction strategies is that third objective, implementing and promoting those, and that has been pulled out into its own objective again, just to help clarify the focus there. And then the fourth objective, remaining focused on reducing congestion. Next, energy. The goal here remaining to provide an adequate, reliable, and diverse supply of energy to serve the communities and economies of Cape Cod. And the first objective focused on supporting renewable energy development. The second on the resiliency of the energy generation and delivery system. And then the last one focusing on promoting energy efficiency and conservation measures through the design and planning of our energy systems and projects. Next is waste management. The goal here to promote a sustainable and solid waste management system for the region that prioritizes reuse and diversion and protects public health, safety, and the environment. And this first objective remains focused on reducing waste and encouraging zero waste initiatives, but have added in some language here to more explicitly call out things like reuse, beneficial reuse, and deconstruction. And that second objective remaining focusing on supporting an integrated solid waste management system. And then final issue area here within the built systems, climate change. As I mentioned, the 2018 regional policy plan, this is climate mitigation, but based on feedback received, have made it a bit broader to encompass not only the mitigation aspect of addressing climate change, but also the adaptation aspect. And so the goal has been revised somewhat and now suggested to be to increase the region's resiliency to climate change impacts, as well as mitigate climate change by supporting and contributing to the Commonwealth's zero carbon targets. And the first objective here remaining to promote low or no carbon transportation alternatives and technologies. The second still focused on electrification of buildings and promoting low or no carbon technologies for building systems. The third also remaining focused on carbon sequestration, and the fourth on low or no carbon energy generation. And then this fifth objective here is a new one, looking to promote strategies to address climate change induced impacts, such as wildfire or extreme temperatures, or changes in precipitation. And then finally, community systems. The first issue area here is cultural heritage, and the goal remaining to protect and preserve the significant cultural, historic, and archaeological values and resources of the region. And that first objective really focused on our built environment and protecting and preserving kind of the key character defining features of those built historic resources. The second focused on protecting and preserving our archaeological resources. The third, looking to preserve and enhance public access and rights to and along the shore. And then the fourth, looking to protect and preserve our traditional industries such as agricultural and maritime development and uses. Next is economy. This goal, as well as the supporting objectives, were reworked significantly to better align with our comprehensive economic development strategy that was completed in 2024. So the goal, better reflecting the vision in that now being to promote a resilient, inclusive, and diverse regional economy that protects and builds on Cape Cod's competitive advantages. And there were previously several more objectives under this issue area, but many of them were dealt with more specifically within other issue areas such as community design. And so now really focusing more so on those that are more specific to our industries and workforce. The first one looking to support our traditional and emerging businesses and industries, and the second supporting our local workforce and economic activity and entrepreneurship. And then finally is housing. The goal remaining here to promote the production of an adequate supply of ownership and rental housing that is safe, healthy, and attainable for people with different income levels and diverse needs. 4 objectives remaining as well. The first focusing on increasing our housing diversity and choice in terms of what options we have throughout the region. The second, focusing on our year-round housing supply and increasing that. And the third remaining focused on improving our existing housing stock and protecting that. The fourth objective previously was increase housing affordability, but this has been revised somewhat to increase affordable and attainable housing. This is in response to feedback received throughout the process, but also a lot of feedback received throughout development of our regional housing strategy, recognizing that certainly there's a tremendous need for capital A affordable housing in the region, but there's also a tremendous need to support people earning above 80% of the area median income who can't quite afford a home in the region regardless. So that attainable housing, looking to increase and support that addition here. Next, Chapter 7 is coordinated regional and local planning. And this chapter provides an overview of many of the recent issue-specific plans that have been developed since the 2018 Regional Policy Plan, as well as, of course, much of the progress that's been made and implementation of the 208 plan, but noting the Climate Action Plan, which was new since then. Also have a new transportation plan, as well as comprehensive economic development strategy. I mentioned our new freshwater strategy and housing strategy as well. So providing an overview of those and really how they help support the overall vision of the regional policy plan. And within this section is also a discussion of local comprehensive plans and how they can align with the regional policy plan and support the vision moving forward. And then Chapter 8 remains the Cape Cod place types. This was a new concept introduced in the 2018 Regional Policy Plan, really as a way of describing the region in terms of places with similar built and natural characteristics. And so they range from our least developed and most sensitive areas, our natural areas, up to those that are more intensely developed, such as our community activity centers and industrial activity centers. And these really serve a role both in our regulatory process, but also are a useful lens as we think about planning for the region. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Erin Perry, Deputy Director.
Thank you so much, Chloe. As Chloe said, I'm Erin Perry, Deputy Director at the Commission, and I'll cover the last 2 chapters in the draft regional policy plan. So Chapter 9 covers regional regulatory review, and by and large, this is consistent with the chapter on regional regulatory review from 2018. It continues to include information on the role of goals and objectives, the role of Cape Cod place types, the role of technical guidance, as well as RPP consistency and the probable benefit detriment analysis and information on waiver and flexibility. So these are substantively consistent with 2018. We have expanded the discussion and added some additional information around the role of sensitive resource areas, so areas like biomap habitats, rare species habitats, wetlands. We have also, and this is perhaps the most significant change to this chapter, have transitioned some of the information that was previously in the local and regional coordinated planning chapter around planning tools available through the Act. So these are tools like the growth incentive zones. Those tools and that information is now articulated in the chapter on regional regulatory review, given the relationship of those tools to our regulatory program. And Chapter 10 is recommended actions. In 2018, Chapter 10 discussed performance measures. This chapter now recognizes that with the number of different issue-specific plans that are kind of out there today, there are a number of different metrics and measures that are included in those issue-specific plans to really track progress and understand how implementation of those plans is impacting the issue areas in which they address. And so this chapter really focuses now on recommended actions. It's a critical element of the regional policy plan. It allows us to identify, working with stakeholders throughout the region, what those key priorities are for the coming years. And so this chapter has a number of different recommendations within those 3 categories of natural, built, and community systems. And so I'll just walk through each of the systems very briefly. So under natural systems, we've identified 6 recommended actions to support protection, preservation, restoration of our natural systems. The first, develop a regional open space plan with 86% of the land area across the region either already developed or protected. It's critical that we focus on those priorities for open space moving forward with a particular focus on natural resource areas and sensitive habitats. There are several here related to water quality. developing an advanced dynamic groundwater model is something that we've been in discussions with, with the United States Geological Survey, who has done a lot of modeling on Cape Cod, and there's an opportunity to develop more detailed modeling that would help us not only address our fresh and coastal water quality challenges, and really aid in better understanding and identifying strategies, but also better understanding groundwater across the region. Advanced aquifer protection planning really is very much connected to better understanding our groundwater. This is something we heard through development of the freshwater strategy as well as through the regional policy plan process. There are opportunities to do more integrated water resources planning that incorporates and really better connects the the fresh and coastal water quality planning that has been ongoing with broader aquifer planning. And then developing model wetland bylaws for pond and buffer protection, again, something we heard also through the freshwater strategy and is a recommendation of that strategy, but also through the regional policy plan process, is that the commission can develop some additional tools and resources for communities to better protect our freshwater ponds and promote habitat and natural resource restoration across the region. And so developing those models to better protect pond buffer areas, is a recommendation here. And then there are 2 state initiatives that are ongoing. So the Massachusetts Farmland Action Plan is a plan that was developed by the Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth is supporting implementation and prioritizing implementation of that plan. The commission staff have been engaged in that effort, and we have been, following that process. And while, agricultural land is perhaps, not as prevalent here as it is in other areas of the state, it's critical that we continue to work with the state and other partners to enable implementation of that plan here and ensure that our agricultural resources continue to be vibrant and useful here in the region, productive here in the region. And then updating the ocean management plan, we have a Barnstable County or Cape Cod Ocean Management Plan. The state has an ocean management plan that is due to be updated. They are reconvening their Ocean Advisory Commission, and the commission has participated. Commission staff have participated on that in the past. We anticipate continuing to be engaged in that effort, and it would be appropriate to look at the Cape Cod Ocean Management Plan and potentially update that plan, consistent with the state's process. The built systems category, there are 7 recommendations within the built systems. Several of them have to do with climate action and coastal resiliency. Advancing actions that reduce risk in the coastal flood zone builds on work that we have done with all 15 communities to develop model wetlands and zoning bylaws and regulations to better protect both the built environment and natural resources in the region. It's looking at opportunities to support local and regional implementation of those bylaws and regulations is a priority. Certainly supporting local climate action planning and implementation, building on the work done by through the Cape Cod Climate Action Plan. We have been working with a number of local communities in different capacities, whether it's helping to facilitate development of local plans, conducting greenhouse gas emissions inventories, or working with communities to support implementation of the low-lying roads analysis. These efforts are a priority and are ongoing. And then goes hand in hand with that, but supporting post-disaster planning initiatives. We know that despite the significant planning and implementation of climate resilience projects that are ongoing in the region, we will continue to be vulnerable. And so looking at opportunities to better plan for those disasters we may see in the future, and really be able to articulate our priorities, especially around redevelopment in advance of those potential storm and climate-induced disasters. Is a priority and is a recommended action of this plan. Development of a regional capital plan. This is something that you may recall from the 2018 regional policy plan. Staff have been working to develop a framework and an approach to a regional capital plan that could enable both more collaboration across the communities in the region, but also more collaboration with our state and federal partners around capital planning and ensuring that the resources are available to support our infrastructure needs across the Cape. So that is a priority that we will continue to focus on. supporting efforts for collaboration on waste diversion and disposal options. And I believe many of you may be aware that we collaborated with the county's cooperative extension to develop a number of studies related to waste diversion and disposal. This data and information is important to ongoing collaborations and conversations around how to better manage our waste. And we'll continue to work to ensure that data and information and other data and information needs are available to support those initiatives. And then finally, supporting implementation of the Cape Cod Vision Zero Action Plan. This is our most recent regional plan, really focuses on roadway safety for all users, and implementation of its recommendations will be critical as it relates to transportation and the broader community safety. So will be a priority over the coming 5 years. Chloe, if you could advance to the next, the recommended actions under the community systems. We have 7 recommendations here under community systems. Along the top, those 3 that you see are really actions that we have been doing. We know are continued, continue to be important for our region and our priorities for the Commission. Continuing to expand understanding of underrepresented histories. That is a more recent initiative. We've worked to develop data and information and a story map that better articulates information about those underrepresented histories in the region, and really goes hand in hand with some of our kind of long-term work on supporting new and updated historic inventories. We recognize and understand that having a good understanding of our past helps us to better plan for our future, and these 2 kind of initiatives and this ongoing work will be important as we look at all of the regional priorities that are articulated in the regional policy plan. And then, as Chloe said, we have a recent comprehensive economic development strategy. We have just completed year 1 of implementation, and we will continue to maintain that. It's critical for us to have a SED so that we can maintain the economic development district designation for the entire county, ensure that we have access to resources that might be available for economic development initiatives through the Economic Development Administration. And then these last 4 that you see are really connected to the housing priorities across the Cape and build upon the work in the regional housing strategy, while also connecting to priorities related to historic and cultural resources. So encouraging local regulations that protect historic and archaeological resources is a recommended action, and it goes hand in hand with housing, as it is a priority to look at reuse and redevelopment, both in the regional policy plan and in the regional housing strategy. And our historic buildings really provide an opportunity to both preserve that history as well as utilize our existing built environment to address some of those challenges. Supporting zoning changes for greater housing opportunities, again, directly related to the regional housing strategy and implementation of the local zoning recommendations included in that plan. Supporting implementation of the Affordable Homes Act. We know a number of our communities are designated seasonal communities, and that there will be, resources and programs available to those communities. And so, in part, this recommendation includes ensuring that our communities have the resources and the support they need to be able to access those new programs. So that's something we've been engaged in and will continue to be engaged in. And then finally, convening a funding and financing working group for housing initiatives is something that we've heard throughout the regional housing strategy and the regional policy plan process. There are a number of different potential strategies that we have been working on, and I know others all across the region are working on to help really promote more year-round affordable and attainable housing. It's something that we can do at the Commission is help to convene the appropriate stakeholders to really discuss which of the funding and financing mechanisms are most appropriate to enable implementation of some of those strategies. And so that's a very brief overview of the recommended actions. We know that, as we work toward this final regional policy plan and implementation of the regional policy plan, there are other areas of potential change. There are a number of guidance documents and resources that support implementation of the regional policy plan. So we are looking, alongside this process at our review thresholds, certainly technical guidance and mapping that really supports, both the Commission and applicants in implementing the regional policy plan and developing projects that are consistent with its goals and objectives. And then finally, I will just touch briefly, as Christy said, the public comment period remains open through September 24th. There are a number of ways to submit comments. We did already hold a number of public hearings, and we received some feedback through those venues, but we also are accepting written comments through a comment form as well as in writing at the address on the screen. All of this information is available on our RPP Update website. And happy to turn it back over to Christy and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you. Thanks, Erin and Chloe. And so that's our presentation. That was a very, though it may have seemed quite lengthy, short synopsis of what's contained within the regional policy plan itself. We did just want to share a preview of this today. Of course, we are continuing to accept public comment, and what you may see as the final ordinance draft may be slightly different than what we've presented today once we incorporate those comments. But we're happy to take any questions or feedback that you might want to share with us today. Certainly, if anyone would like to get in touch with us after the meeting, that's completely fine as well. So I'll hand it back over to you, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
And thank you very much, all of you. Who would like to ask a question? Delegate Green, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the presentation today. Also, I wanted to thank you for all the hard work that the Commission has done over the past almost year. As you know, I've been following this since you started the process last year, and have attended meetings and commented and looked online at the materials that you provided. I have a couple of housekeeping questions and a couple of substantive questions. The slides that you presented today, can you please send them over to Owen to distribute to us, first of all? I know that you sent us the red line, version of the RPP earlier in the season. If there have been any changes to that, I'm curious because that's what I've been following. But have there been any changes to that? And if there are, can you send that over to us so that it makes it easier for us to go through the RPP and the changes? Because I've been going through that. And when do you think that the revisions will be sent in an ordinance over to the Assembly? If you could answer those three, and then I want to ask some questions that have more substance to it. Is that possible?
Sure, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to respond.
Yes, please do.
So yes, we'd be happy to share the slides. The red line version that is available is the current draft of the 2025 plan. And I'm blanking on your third question.
When do you think the ordinance will come to the?
Yeah, so certainly the public comment closes this month. And so we anticipate getting this over to the Assembly sometime in October.
Thank you. I really appreciate the detail that you've given us today about the updates and the recommended actions. And I know that there's, of course, you have a meeting later this week, like tomorrow, on various technical bulletins. There's other documents that are being updated in one form or another. One of them is the Ocean Management Plan, which I'm very concerned about because there have been a lot of changes in 5 years, actually it's longer than 5 years since you updated that. And I mean, it's radically changed dramatically from 400-foot high 2 megawatt wind turbines to almost 1,200 foot 16 to 18 megawatt wind turbines that are being proposed, and where they're being proposed, and where leases have been sold, et cetera. So this ocean management plan is grossly inadequate for what is potentially in store for this region. I'm very concerned that there's a link to it at the end of of one of the sections, and would highly recommend or ask you. I would recommend that the link be taken out and that this not be used until the state does whatever they do, and hopefully, in keeping a special place special, the commission is able to take a look at that critically and update this ocean management plan and then relink it after the assembly approves it. Do you have any feedback or any comments to the assembly today on that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
good.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So yes, the Ocean Management Plan, and as Erin articulated, is a recommended action within the RPP. We do suggest that that is in need of an update, as the state is also embarking on an effort. So we recognize that. I will look at the link that you're referring to, and if it makes sense to remove that, certainly we'll take a look at that, and happy to follow up.
And then one other question, substance. You talked about updating historic inventories, which I think is really it's something I've been very interested in myself, as well as a lot of areas. But if you have information, where is that? Is that on your website, or where is that located?
Yes, it's on our website. I'm actually going to see if Chloe can just maybe point us more specifically to that information.
And also a plan of what you're planning to, how you're planning to update the historic inventory. Having that information would be helpful. Maybe we could look at that and even have some feedback for you.
Okay, so that was 6 questions, and after that they're answered, then we're going to go to the next person.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So,
Madam Speaker.
Chloe Schaefer, I think you're up.
If I may. Certainly. So that recommended action is really helping to support towns and other entities as they look to either complete or update historic inventory forms. Those are really the first step in helping to identify what the sensitive historic resources are in the region. And then those go into a statewide database, MACRIS, and so really be providing technical assistance to towns as they are looking to do that. That's something we've done in the past, something we're certainly happy to continue to do, and something that towns can reach out to us if they would like assistance doing that as well. And certainly contact information is on our website for that. Myself or Sarah Korjeff, our historic preservation specialist. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to ask a question? Kyle Frizel from Brewster, please go ahead, delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, a slight housekeeping matter. When I was at one of the public hearings, I believe you indicated that you were going to add a chapter in the plan, which was a chapter which focused on all the changes that are in the plan, so someone could just go to that chapter. You don't need a red line. Go to the chapter and see what had been changed in this update plan from the 2018 plan. And I didn't see it today, so I'm just wondering whether that's still something you're planning to do or not.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to respond to that as well. And you are absolutely accurate there. We will be adding a section to the plan that is what's new in this plan, so that it does identify those changes that have happened since the last RPP to this RPP. So we will be including that once we incorporate all of the comments that we receive from the public and stakeholders. We'll be then able to produce that section.
Okay, so that's to come. You mentioned in your report that 14% of the land on Cape Cod is unprotected and undeveloped. And I heard in your presentation today that 86% of the land is developed or protected. So what percent of the land of Cape Cod is protected?
Oh, it's about 40. I'm going to let Erin chime in.
It's about 40%.
It's protected. So
Is
it cannot
protected.
be developed.
Correct.
It cannot be developed.
That's correct.
Right?
That's
Okay.
correct. There are varying levels of protection, but it had about 40% has some form of protection.
So in your naturescape or place, I guess the place type, your natural system, in there, your vision is to, quote, minimize adverse development impacts to sensitive resource areas. And 80% of this 14%, you say, is sensitive areas. So I'm just wondering, why would you not say, not minimize, none, zero, no adverse? Why would we accept any adverse impact on our sensitive areas in our natural system?
Anybody?
So certainly we can have our natural resources team come in and speak to the specifics around those particular place types. But generally it's we would like to minimize impacts in those areas. And so there are much stricter standards when we're looking at projects that are in those particular areas, recognizing that they are areas that are least likely to accommodate growth and development.
Well, again, I just wonder why there's any growth there, given our sensitive and the sensitive areas in the wealth. You say at the very beginning of the report, the wealth of the Cape is those areas. That's our wealth. And elsewhere, actually, in the report, you even say that not only minimize, even no development in those areas, but you don't make it the vision. So I'm just wondering why you're accepting some kind of development in those sensitive areas that remain unprotected.
I just want to say one thing, Christy, if I could, because I'm on zoning and I have the same concerns. I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the reason why you have to say limit is because there's state laws that trump the conservation rules that we have in many of our towns, that if the Conservation Commission says, no, you can't build there on that coastal bank, that they will be appealed and then go to the state, and the state will say, yes, you can. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about when you say limit, because you know that there's other rules that you have no control over?
So yes, Madam Speaker, I would agree with that completely. And some of these areas are already developed. So we certainly are trying to protect these areas. Many of them have different resource layers on them. So we are trying to make sure that they are protected, restored, and you know, it is something that where we do have development that's proposed, it is held to a much stricter standard. So we are really trying to incentivize development, not in those areas. We're really trying to incentivize development in these community activity centers and other areas that can accommodate that growth. So I would agree with you, Madam Speaker, and that, you know, that is really where our focus is with this regional policy plan.
But I guess,
Go ahead, Delegate.
I just didn't realize that the state, I thought with the Cape Cod Commission Act and with the creation of the whole Cape Cod Commission, that we're special, we're set apart. I don't know that, I didn't realize state law can trump us on this.
Go ahead, Christy.
So certainly we are looking at a very limited set of developments that are reviewed by the Cape Cod Commission. So in the case where the regional policy plan is looking at a particular development, these are sets of rules that would apply to that particular development. I believe what the speaker was referring to is conservation restriction or conservation commission regulations at the local level. There are Wetlands Protection Act regulations at the state level. So there are a variety of different resource layers and regulations that certain projects must adhere to. So this is just one piece of that puzzle, I guess you would say, layer of potential regulatory review that would happen.
Yeah, I mean,
and again, this is only a very limited set of projects that would be reviewed.
Right, but I know, and the ones that are in your jurisdiction, the DRIs, those are the ones where you seem to be, without, I think, the state law restricting you, accepting some kind of growth there and some potential adverse impacts. That's what I'm focusing on. I understand that some things are not in your jurisdiction. Can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and again, it's really a case-by-case basis. And in some cases, these are already developed areas. And so we make sure that the resources that are on these parcels and are protected, or at least are accommodated for. And again, it's a case-by-case basis. Every project in these natural areas is different.
Question for you, Madam Speaker. So
Sure.
this will come to us in October as an odd ordinance. We will have a public hearing before we approve that ordinance. Is that correct? The Assembly will hold a public hearing on that ordinance?
I'm going to just make sure with our clerk that that's accurate. I think it is.
Every ordinance is required under the charter to have a public hearing with a notice that's been published at least 7 days before the hearing in a newspaper.
Good, thank you.
Anybody else? Let's just make sure there's no one else, Delegate Green, per our rules, basically. Anybody else have a question for the Cape Cod Commission about this presentation? Yes, please, Delegate Killian.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon. Question on your community systems economy, with a goal to promote a resilient, inclusive, and diverse regional economy that protects and builds on the Cape's competitive advantages. So other than our geography as it relates to tourism, what other competitive advantages do you see that the Cape has, and how would you anticipate that you would promote them?
I'm happy to
Yes,
respond.
please go ahead. Yeah.
Sure, and please, Chloe, jump in if I miss anything from the SEDS. I think there are a number of competitive advantages, not only those that you mentioned related to kind of that tourism economy, but given our location and proximity to the coast and access to those resources, we have an opportunity to really promote, more innovation in the blue economy and maritime industries. We have a strong history as it relates to those maritime industries. We also have, our natural resources, which the SEDS really, I think, clearly articulates as our competitive advantages, as one of our biggest competitive advantages in attracting people to visit and want to live here in the region. And so looking at those, protecting those, but then thinking about how we can, encourage access and, stewardship of those resources is a critical part of the SEDS as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And go ahead, Delegate Green, unless there's anyone else. Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead, Delegate Frederickson.
Good evening. Some really good things. Great presentation. I don't know who does your PowerPoints, but they are always really nice. I had a question on the economy, and I just questioned whether the economy falls under the purview of the Cape Cod Commission. I don't ever remember reading it in any of the laws, but I could be wrong, kind of new at this. So that was a question. That's all.
Go ahead, Chrissy. That's an easy one.
It is an easy one. And economic development is, I used to know this at one point, it's in the Cape Cod Commission Act like 17 times. So certainly I think that there are responsibilities that we are happy to play a role in terms of economic development in the regional and economy. And so the regional policy plan incorporates economic development. We also, as you know, have an economic development, a comprehensive economic development strategy that we update also from time to time, working with the Federal Economic Development Administration and the Barnstable County Economic Development Council. So while certainly we're only one component of a vibrant and sustainable economy in the region, we do try to make sure that we have appropriate goals and objectives to correspond to that objective.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Go ahead, Delegate Green.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So following up on what the delegate from Brewster was talking about, yes, the Cape Cod Commission has regulatory authority. That's what makes you very special and very important to our region. Is there anywhere that clearly defines what this, where the Trump where the state trumps the Cape Cod Commission's regulatory authority, and where the Cape Cod Commission can trump the state's regulations on whatever they want to promote in other parts of the state? Is there anything that clearly defines that for us so we know the nitty-gritty and the various components of that?
Go ahead, Chrissy.
Yep,
unless
Madam
that's
Speaker, that's articulated in the Cape Cod Commission Act.
Okay, so because that's very, very detailed and very complicated, and it's not an easy read for most people. But that's where, That's what you would reference. Okay, thank you very much. And also, it really always brings back when you talk about the issues that you've talked about tonight, it brings back to me that it is so important for the assembly to know what you're involved with, what committees you're following, what issues you're following on the state level and federal level, because so much of it is going to come back to the assembly, and to be updated on this when you come to the assembly and you give us updates. When you told us about the state starting forth on this advisory commission or committee with the ocean management state laws, I mean, that's important information for us to be following if we so choose. So I would really appreciate when you give us updates to let us know what the depth and breadth of those issues are that you're following. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Delegate Frizzell, please.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. So one of the things you have in your report that you plan to do is some kind of online tracking of the progress that you're making under the plan. So do you have some ideas of when that sort of online tracking for people to look at the progress that we're making under this plan, when that might start to become available?
I think we would like to finish this process, but certainly measuring performance is critical, and we have a component built into many of our regional plans so that we can measure how effective we are in addressing some of these issues. I think when we start out measuring performance, it's always hundreds of indicators, and so really kind of keying in on those performance measures that will really have the greatest impact is where we need to focus our time. So combining a lot of the indicators and performance measures from our other plans and really kind of taking those forward into something that's digestible will be the goal. So hopefully within a few months of completing this plan, we'll at least have that process initiated and some kind of an online tracking system at least initiated so that we can start tracking and measuring the effectiveness of many of these tools.
Thank you. I think that's going to be a great addition. So hope you get that moving. Thank you.
We'll work on it.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's going to conclude our presentation questions, and we really appreciate you coming here to do this, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So the Assembly now convenes. I don't think we have any reports of officers or committees that I am aware of. That's number 12. Orders of the day. I don't think we have any of those necessarily. And new business. I'm not aware of new business. So announcements. I have an announcement to make along with the Deputy Speaker. So he's going to chime in a moment, and he knows that. So it's been almost 6 months since the Assembly declared a housing crisis on Cape Cod, and the centerpiece topic has been the idea of a luxury fee, a transfer fee on Cape Cod. As you know, we've got some feedback on that, and because that's important and we want to keep the train rolling on this and try to come up with something to present to the legislature, I have decided along with the Deputy Speaker that we would like to convene a special meeting of the Assembly for this topic on September 24th. And the public will be made aware of this, and I'm hoping that delegates talk to their towns, and you'd have until September 17th to let the clerk know who you'd like to invite and testify during this committee of the whole, which would be on September 24th. Before that, there'll be plenty of time for you to go ahead and talk to your towns. I'm going to ask the Deputy Speaker to outline the legislative timeline, so to speak, and he can sort of recite that for you and answer some questions, not answer some questions, to give you some information, because this is not posted on the agenda, so it's essentially not up for debate. We're just letting you know that you'll receive an email on this with the timeline, and we're looking forward to moving along and having something voted on in the month of November. So it'll be essentially a 7-month timeline between the time this was initially announced and when we try to take a vote on it. And the last thing I'll say is this is not a novel idea to have a real estate transfer fee. So it's not something that I think is moving too fast. It's a novel idea to do it regionally. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Speaker. Dan, please go ahead.
Absolutely. Can you hear me all right there?
Yes.
Okay. And as the speaker said, I think questions will probably have to go through the clerk. But as I go through this timeline, if there's clarification questions or just comprehension questions, or if I'm just not clear, please feel free to pause me after through the speaker. But the timeline that we're going to send out lays out the next several months procedurally. September 3rd is today, where the speaker's announcing this housing hearing to be scheduled 3 weeks from now. Tomorrow, we're going to send out a press advisory, simply laying out the schedule that we're also telling folks today about, and also announcing the September 24th hearing, so the public's made aware of it. On September 8th, myself and delegates representing communities that have home rule petitions, we're taking the opportunity to meet with our towns to discuss their home rule petitions that they sent to the legislature and what a regional effort would have in relation to them. This is one part of a robust process, and I would encourage delegates to continue meeting with their towns as well as this goes forward. On September 10th, the speaker and I, on behalf of the speaker, would like to start sending letters out to attendees that are invited for the September 24th meeting, as in if you would like someone to not just speak in public comment, but come testify as the Cape Cod Commission did today, or a number of other folks will on September 24th when it comes to housing specifically. If you have individuals that you would like to attend that meeting, either from your community or people that you know, please let the clerk know who those would be. And then we're trying to get those names in by the 17th. So that starting on the 10th, but on a rolling basis, we can start sending letters officially inviting those folks to show up and speak to the assembly and answer some questions and provide their perspective. After the 17th, where those names come in, we'll have the actual hearing a week later, which is going to be a special hearing on the transfer fee. Following that, the speaker plans to appoint a subcommittee to initiate the drafting of a home rule petition and an ordinance. On September 29th, that subcommittee will have its first meeting. On October 1st, we would encourage delegates that have some feedback from their communities and some feedback that they've gathered from the hearing that happened in September to send in writing to the Economic Affairs Committee their thoughts and their left and right limits of what they would like to see out of these ordinances and these petitions in writing, just so we can continue to consolidate what folks in legislative bodies want to see happen. On October 6th, so following those written comments, the subcommittee is going to meet again and incorporate delegate feedback into this very initial draft of the home rule petition. Later on October 8th, the Economic Affairs Committee meeting is going to come together and discuss and vote on a draft of a home rule petition and an ordinance to send to the full assembly. As the clerk mentioned earlier today, the first step of any ordinance is that it will be presented to the assembly. It will be published for an open public hearing, and we will also take the time to actually walk folks through what will inevitably be a more or less dense piece of legislation, step by step, so that people can understand what exactly is up for discussion over the next several weeks. And then on November 5th, there's going to be the first assembly meeting after a filed ordinance, at which point in time the ordinance would be, and the home rule petition could be put on the agenda for discussion, debate, amendments, and so forth. Obviously, lots of dates, everything is going to be sent in writing to everyone, so by no means do I expect, or would I expect anyone to remember everything off that I just rattled off, but the clerk has it and he's going to distribute this timeline. And to really sum this up and I think briefly editorialize, which I'll take the liberty to do, I would say this is, a skeleton of procedures. This is not, the end all be all for what the debate is going to look like on the home rule on a transfer fee. This is not the end all be all on what the legislative process will look like or what the feedback from the community is going to be. There's 15 delegates here that each owe a responsibility to our communities, to represent their interests, to talk to folks in that community and decide what's best for them and what's a no-go for them. And this is simply a timeline that helps guide those conversations so people in the community know when the important meetings are, when some decision points will be made, and keep us on track. Because, things move and things have to continue moving, and we only have 2-year terms, and the goal here would be to move something along. And one last note that I would leave us with here is, it helps to have some structure when you're going back to your communities and you're starting to have these conversations. So the way I've had these conversations is I've broken them down into pretty much 6 fundamental policy areas that a transfer fee home rule petition covers. One is the percentage you're looking to raise it by. Some towns have done 0.5% when they've sent up these home rule petitions. Some have done 3%, and anything in between. Number 2 is the threshold that you're willing to set, whether it's $1 million or $3 million or whatever standard you want that you demarcate as a luxury real estate transfer fee. Number 3 is exemption. Are you looking to exempt first-time home buyers? Are you looking to exempt year-round residents? So forth. 4, and I think this is probably the most important for the conversations we're going to have with our towns, is the amount of flexibility you want to have in the towns. Are towns opting into this? Are they opting out? Are they getting to decide their own rate within a certain sliding scale? Are they getting to decide their own threshold? Number 5 is, and I think this leans into something that Delegate Frizzell was talking about earlier today, is your additional stipulations, whether it's environmentally sensitive areas or how members of the working group have talked about those additional stipulations that you want around a source of funding like this. And lastly, is administration, what does the trust look like? What are administrative costs and how are those attributed? I say this not to try to persuade in any way, but simply hopefully to give folks the ingredients that they can go back to their towns with and incorporating this timeline. Thank you very much.
Okay, and thank you. I don't want to do any further than that because it's not on the agenda, but that's about the limit that we're going to take on this announcement. So with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam Speaker.
Madam, I have something before you adjourn.
Sure, although this isn't up for debate, it's an
I'm not
announcement.
debating anything. Can you send this out to
Oh,
us
yeah.
right away, like
Yes.
tonight?
Yes,
Because I have to
Yes.
meet with my select board very
Yes.
soon.
yes. I
and
was
that-
going to
and
say
I need
that.
this information. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Madam
As do I.
Speaker, I have another question. Just
There's not
a
going to be a debate.
clarification of what the deputy speaker said. So I received information about a meeting next Monday, which it's my understanding from what the deputy speaker just said, that meeting on Monday will go ahead as planned. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, there's no other reason to think you're not.
And so that's a videotape meeting.
Yes,
And the people.
you got
who
the
were-
invitation, yes?
But I don't know who else in my town or the other
Okay,
towns.
when you look at
or-
the invitation, you'll see who is on that.
I looked, I already looked, I didn't see it.
Okay.
Could there be a listing of who is invited and if anybody has responded? So that we
yes,
know?
Yes, it's on my invitation.
It's not on mine.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask Owen to resend that with all the people that were invited. Would you please, Mr. Clerk?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Anybody else have a clarification? I just want to be mindful of open meeting law, that this is an announcement and you will get an email with all these dates. Okay? Okay, now we'll move to adjourn.
I so moved.
And roll call vote, Mr. Clark.
Delegate Frizel. I'm sorry, Delegate Frederickson.
Yes.
Delegate Frizel.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher. Deputy Speaker Gessen.
Yeah.
Delegate Green.
Yes.
Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Dean Omen.
Yes.
Speaker Potash.
Yes.
Delegate Sampson.
Yes.
Delegate Ty.
Yes.
Delegate Warner.
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, we're adjourned.
Okay, thank you and good night, Cape Cod.